Time for us to wander the world. And in our travels today, we're speaking to someone who truly has wandered the world, usually into very far-flung corners of the world that have one thing in common. Not so many fellow tourists and a whole lot of very cold water. Ryan Stramrood is an extreme open water and ice swimmer, a multiple Guinness World Record holder, and an inspirational speaker. We've had him on the show many times before talking about individual swims, but today I just want to pick his brain about some of the most memorable places his sport has taken him to. Everywhere from Alaska to South America to the furthest reaches of Russia, and destinations that did their best to kill him in the mix as well. Ryan, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's great to have you in studio again. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
A pleasure.
Oh, such a cool topic too.
Before we get traveling, let's just remind listeners about, it's one thing to talk about where you go, but why you go and why you do this. What was it that first got you plunging into freezing cold water?
It's been such a journey, Pippa. Just the cold waters in and around Cape Town is where I started it, getting off the couch just at the age of 30, being a couch potato and starting to figure out that actually I enjoy the swimming thing and the element of cold really challenges me, and that took me on this journey. You meet a bunch of like-minded mates, and all of a sudden you do something that kind of pings on the world's radar, and all of a sudden you're invited to all kinds of places to push further boundaries, and that's where the journey's been.
And it's a journey that continues to this day. We last heard you chatting to John Matham a couple of weeks ago about the latest swim around St. Helena Island.
Yes.
Are you already planning the next big one?
It's in the back of my head, but no. Okay. I have to officially say no. I cannot, because as soon as I start planning it, it just becomes obsessive, and I keep going. So St. Helena is still very fresh. That was 48 kilometers of solo swimming, and it was quite hard and draining on the body and the bank account as well. So
fair enough. And just by the way, we're going to be talking about St. Helena from the maritime perspective with Brian Ingpen later on today. Just fortuitously, he wrote in to say, I want to talk about the ships that travelled between Cape Town and Jamestown. So that'll be on the menu again at 2:45 this afternoon for those who are interested. But, St. Helena, relatively mild compared to some of the extreme environments that you have swum in. Looking at the list of destinations that you've picked out as among the most memorable, it's everywhere from the very far northern tip of Russia to the very southern reaches of South America, places where there is, it would appear at first, more ice than water to swim in. Yeah. Ryan, is the ability to go and see places like that very few people get to ever, part of the attraction of what you do, or sort of a side effect that happens to be quite a nice one?
Well, it started as a side effect, and then it's become one of the most privileged things that I think I've ever been able to boast about. And I'm always there, never as a tourist, always there as a swimmer, trying to take on something really difficult, and I'm nervous, and quite often, you're always, well, for me, not quite often, always on a shoestring budget, and you end up staying with locals and with families, so you're not in hotels, you're not doing the touristy thing. So in fact, a lot of the places I've been, there aren't hotels. They probably don't even know what a hotel is. So I'm just blessed to have seen some of this world's craziest places and experienced it in a very different way to most.
So, it's very hard to even know where to start. And looking at the map, let's start with the Americas. As I said, you've traveled right the way from Alaska in the north down to the southernmost reaches of Chile. What was the most remote spot you would say that you went to?
Most remote was definitely the Diomede Islands.
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating story. And I've actually been there twice, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And I've got a wonderful little accolade that I love sharing, is that I turned 40 years old twice. I went once with a whole group, international group, who were trying to be the first in the world to relay from mainland Russia all the way across to mainland Alaska in the Bering Sea. And it's really wild and difficult. And right in the middle of that Bering Sea are these two little clumps of rock, really. One's called Big Diomede, which its real name is Ratmanova, which is a Russian island. And right 3.8 kilometers away from that is an American island. Called Little Diomede. And I decided I want to try and solo swim, be the first solo man to swim from Russia to America.
Sure.
And that turned out to be a complete journey. And obviously through that, you end up spending some time on the island, and it's fascinating.
But the two birthdays being because you crossed the international date line in the process?
Yes, it's with the relay attempt, and we were on a big ship, and we were in Russian waters, and I turned 40 years old on that ship. I'd love to, if we had time, I'd tell that story. And then we went across into America. I've got to get this right. It was a few years ago.
Yeah.
And the weather turned bad, and we ran out of permit. Being on a Russian ship, we weren't allowed in the American waters. So we had to go back into Russian water, which was literally a few kilometers on the other side of this imaginary line. And I turned 39 again. So because it's a day late, or I might have which way around it was very wrong. But then the time caught up again, and I turned 40 again. So I had 2 40ths.
So I love that. So these islands are 3.8 kilometers apart, but nearly a full day apart in
21
time.
hours
in time.
In time, yeah.
Amazing. And I mean, that water, to do that crossing, what sort of water temperature are we talking?
It was meant to be 6 degrees, but it turned out to be 3.2 degrees. And that is one of the swims, but that I can't claim as having succeeded. Again, a massive story. We didn't get permission to go swim into the Russian waters. And the Ratmanova Island is actually a military base. And it's quite hectic if you're in a speedo in 3-degree water and you swim there and then you get arrested. You're not going to last very long. So we lost a lot of our American support crew through their insurance visas, their insurance permits, etc. Not being allowed. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up swimming 3.8 kilometers from Russia into the USA, but I didn't go from the actual island to the other island, which would allow me to claim the record.
Okay.
But wow, still an experience of note.
And I mean, when that happens, I mean, as you know, the kind of extreme tasks you undertake, it's a given that you're not always going to succeed. Does that haunt you and bug you? And is the part of your brain going, I've got to go back and finish it one day? Or have you reached the point where you're able to go, it wasn't my day, I'm going to move on to something else? Yeah,
a little bit of both, actually.
Okay.
It does sit with me. I would still love to go and do that. But, just for your listeners, I flew from Cape Town to Joburg to London to New York to Anchorage to Nome to Wales, and then I got on a boat, went to the islands. So it's not round the corner.
Yeah.
It's quite a commute. So I would love to do it. It doesn't haunt me necessarily. It's part of my story. It's part of the growth. Would I like to tick it off? Yeah, I would.
You would. Watch this space. One day. Add to the list of one day. Now, I mean, some of the destinations on your list of famous swims are more recognizable. Ushuaia in particular in Argentina. Yeah. Anybody who's gone on a cruise to the Antarctic knows that's the traditional jumping off point. You, of course, experienced it from a very different perspective, though.
I did, yes. I've actually, once again, I've been there twice. Once when I was going to Antarctica, and another time when I was going to try with a group of mates to try and swim. We're doing a trilogy of swims, and we were going to Cape Horn Island, but we also wanted to go and swim the Beagle Channel, which is on the other side, almost facing Ushuaia.
Okay.
And that's a little place also on my list called Porto Williams. And Porto Williams and Ushuaia compete with each other and both claim to be the southernmost town in the world.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of rivalry. You can literally see the one from the other. But we were based in Porto Williams, which I would say is much smaller than Ushuaia. Okay. But I think that the question is, are they really a town? They had one little coffee shop that smelled like petrol the entire time. And we were based there for about a week trying to swim that Beagle Channel.
Yeah.
But you get to know a place that's only got one coffee shop quite well in a week.
Yeah. And it's people. I mean, you've said that you often stay with locals when you're doing swims like this, right? Yeah. I mean, what does that add to your experience as a traveler to be homestaying rather than having a hotel experience?
Amazing. And it's very lucky because you see things you would never see. You learn a little bit of the culture. You eat at the dinner table with them. You learn what real hospitality is. I mean, when nobody's coming into their lives, and they, so often, more often than not, what's laid on for us is just incredible. People move out of their bedrooms and room. They all sleep on the floor, and you feel guilty sleeping in someone's bed, like in a place called Punta Arenas, where we based for a week. We're trying to swim the Magellan Channel. And we stayed with a wonderful family who looked after us. In fact, they fetched us at the airport.
Wow.
And they fetched us in this van. And when we walked to the van, there was this brightly colored car with our big life-size images of us on the side.
Oh my gosh.
Which was all in Speedos, which was exceptionally embarrassing, but absolutely unique as well.
Amazing.
They were so excited about us coming and us making this attempt on the swim in their little town and staying with them that they'd gone through all this trouble and branded their van for us.
I mean, I was just amazed that they would make the effort to come and get you at the airport, let alone to put you on the side of the van. I love that story.
Very true.
We're talking to Ryan Stramrood, extreme swimmer, about some of his travels to some of the most far-flung corners of the globe with the coldest water and very little in the way of sort of tourist infrastructure. And if you've got questions for him, you're very welcome to ask them. Keith has sent in a question asking how long it normally takes your body to get back to normal temperature after a swim.
Keith, thanks for the question. That is, it's a little bit how long is a piece of string, but it depends how cold and how long you've been in the water. But a lot of what I do, when it's extremely cold water, from 0 degrees Celsius to, let's say, from 5 down to 0, I won't be in for too long. 32 minutes is the longest, and that was in Antarctica. And it took probably, you don't know, your core temperature takes a lot longer. But you probably stop shivering in that within 45 minutes to an hour. I'm a big shiverer. Everyone thinks because I've been doing these icy cold swims for the last 20 years that I don't feel the cold. But, I come out, I did a swim this weekend and I stand there shivering on the side. And I was like, but I thought you were the guy who doesn't shiver. I always have to tell him, no, I hate the cold just as much as anyone else. But it's been such a fascinating classroom for me.
Yeah. Learning to master that, I'm sure, a mental challenge as much as a physical one.
Humans haven't evolved well to handle the cold, but we've evolved very well to avoid it. So the things that happen in your head and your body when you expose yourself to temperatures that are going to kill you eventually, all these subconscious defense mechanisms come bounding to the fore. And when you repeat it enough, you begin to understand it. And you begin to understand how overzealous this wonderful protection defense mechanism that you've got is.
Yeah.
And once you understand it, you start to see where else you apply it, not just in the cold water, but in all aspects of life. And that's become a great classroom for me. That's what I preach around the world at the moment.
Yeah. Ryan, you talked about your body's defense mechanisms to stop something that could kill it. Some of your swims have come close. They've done their very best to try and kill you. And one in particular of Northern Ireland, I gather, it came very close indeed. Won't you share that story with us?
Yeah, I was trying. There's a very well-known channel called the North Channel. So it's a few notches up from the English Channel. The water's a lot colder, and it was very much my time to swim it. I was ready for it. I'd done the training. Everything was right. And off I went, and I didn't get a very nice day, but I can't blame that. That was my decision to go. I was advised not to, but I went anyway. And about 6 hours into the swim, and it was about 11.5 to 12.5 degrees Celsius, which when you're just in a Speedo, goggles and cap, for your listeners, there's no wetsuits or anything like that involved. That sucks the life out of you quite quickly. And everything went perfectly well for me up till about 5.5 hours, and all of a sudden the wheels fell off. And what turned out, just to cut the long story short, is I had contracted something called SIPE, which I'd never heard of at the time, and that is swimming-induced pulmonary edema.
Good heavens.
And a combination, no one really knows, but a combination of the freezing water and a lack of sleep and maybe some medication I took for pain, aches and pains, and lots of other things, and ingesting a lot of salt water as well upset a chemical balance inside me, and my lungs were filling up with water. And the problem, so you're slowly drowning, but you don't really know it. And I'm so trained to know that I'm going to feel terrible, and I'm so conditioned to push past what I need to, and to not be soft, and to understand it. But this was just next level. And of course, lack of oxygen to my brain made my thought process even slower and worse. And all of a sudden, I kind of blacked out in it. Sure. And next thing I was in the boat. That's the next thing I remember. So, that was, and then 2 nights in a far northern Irish hospital. It was not fun having my lungs drained.
I mean, thank heavens that is why there is a support boat with you on 100%. All of these swims. But I mean, wow, what a story. Yeah. We've got a caller on the line who wants to say something to you, because I believe he's had the experience of swimming with Ryan. Jeff is on the line from Paarl. Good afternoon, Jeff.
Hey, Ryan. How's it, man? We met on the weekend, and I introduced myself to you.
Yes, Jeff, I remember.
Together at the False Bay Express. Yeah, man. I just want to say thank you. You were absolutely inspirational in getting me off my couch and into the water. And we both know why.
Yes.
And all I'm saying is thank you very much. And you are an inspiration. I've read your book. And I want to get more people to say, hey, listen, swim in the sea. It's amazing for so many reasons. And I just need to say thank you, because you have physically changed my life, my mental well-being. You know what water does for us. And next year I'm going to give you a better run for your money.
I love it, Jeff. Thanks so much for taking the time to call. That makes me feel good. Thank you.
Amazing call. Jeff, thank you so much. I mean, drop the mic and leave the studio, right? I mean, that's why you do what you do, right?
It is, and I appreciate Jeff's call very much, but I'm so blessed to be able to encourage a lot of people and help a lot of people, not just in swimming as well, but just with how they think and how they perform.
Because that is the message of your inspirational speaking, is taking the lessons you've learned from your sport and applying them to the rest of life.
Correct. Drawing parallels to higher performance sport and high performance business and all that, for the sales pitch. But, it extends a lot further than that. What you learn, what I've learned in the cold, I don't try to get people into the cold necessarily, but I take the lessons that I've learned and how I've pushed and what I've managed to achieve. And I draw beautiful parallels, and it's thankfully helped a lot of people.
That's great. Jeff, so appreciate that call. Thank you. We've also received a voice note that's come in on 0725671567. Can we take a listen to that?
Hi, Pippa. It's John here from Constantia. I'd like to ask Ryan a question. And just interesting, he flies everywhere, goes everywhere, and he's been there for 20 years. How does he fund it? How do you fund it, Ryan? How do you fund this whole lifestyle?
The $1 million question,
the
literally.
$1 million question. And I say this very sincerely, a large part of every challenge I've done is being able to fund it.
Okay.
I've recently, you mentioned I've just been to St. Helena Island, and once again, I actually don't have the money for it. I have the credit for it. And I sat there with my partner, Lee Daneka, and I first said, no, I'm not going to do it. It would be too irresponsible. And then reminded myself that every single swim I've ever done has been an irresponsible financial decision. But look where it's got me, and look what it's taught me, and look the growth I have had. So that doesn't answer John's question, but it's all, I'd say 95% self-funded, and that is I save for it, and I have to work extremely hard, and I have to do it on a shoestring budget, and make a plan. It really is part of the challenge. In fact, that's something that Lewis Pugh taught me back in the days. Yeah. That is very much part of your challenge is funding it and getting there, and it's exceptionally easy to say no. Exceptionally easy to say, I can't afford it. And maybe that's sometimes the responsible thing to do. If I'd said no all the times I should have said no, my life would look very different and definitely not nearly as rich.
Okay. So the final question, to circle back to the travel aspect of your story, Ryan, is there one destination that sort of has a special warm spot in your heart? Not for the warmth of the water, but pardon the pun, but just as a destination that you walked away from thinking, wow, I'm so glad I got to see this part of the world.
Yes. Firstly, the Yakutsian region in Russia was most certainly the most unique. I wish I could spend more time there. We were off to do the Bering relay, and we flew from Moscow in a big plane with a whole bunch of people. The plane, I don't know how the thing got in the air, but we had to stop over somewhere in the middle of central Russia, and we attended a shaman, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, a ceremony, and it was just fascinating. And the other one, which is my personal, is Nome in Alaska. Now, I'm a big watcher of a show called Gold Rush and Gold Divers and all these things, and I'd done it long before I was ever thinking I'd get to Nome. I didn't even know the place really existed. It always looks like fairy tales. And then all of a sudden I found myself in Nome in a pub sitting with the Pomrenkis and all the characters of the show I'd been watching for years, and having a fine time with them. And Nome is just such a unique, I certainly don't recommend it as a destination to put on your list, but for me it had special meaning, and I've now been there twice, and always being attached to some crazy hectic challenge, I suppose gives it a little more mystery, plus the TV show and me being in an episode almost in my own head.
Amazing. Like waking up in the middle of an episode of Rivals in the British countryside and wondering how you got there. Not quite on the same scale. Ryan, it's been wonderful chatting to you and catching up, and thanks for both the travel aspect and the sort of more philosophical life skills aspect of the conversation. I think you could hear from the nature of the messages that it really does impact people hearing these stories. So thanks for sharing them with us. And I know there is some saving to be done until the next big adventure, but when you're ready to take it on, let us know where you're heading, and we'll gladly follow you vicariously.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the interest, Pippa. I really appreciate it, and I will certainly let you know what's next, because there always is something.
There's always going to be a next. He's never going to stop. Ryan Stramrood, thanks for joining us.